Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CustomerSure's Closed Loop podcast. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm Darren Wake, Head of Customer Success at CustomerSure, and delighted once again for this episode to be joined by Ben Bax. Ben, welcome and thank you.
Hi, Darren. Thank you. Good to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, likewise. No, thanks very much for joining us for another episode. So just to introduce Ben, Ben is a hugely experienced senior leader in customer experience and customer success. Ben has significant experience in tech, SaaS and regulated sectors, and he's headed up customer functions for both large FTSE organisations and SME startups. Ben has a track record in delivering step changes in customer experience and building and implementing customer strategies from the ground up, which make a real difference to the business and its performance. So Ben also operates as a consultant, not only helping clients with customer experience, but also increasing revenue from an existing customer base. Just to shed more light on Ben's experience, so Ben's worked with a variety of huge and interesting companies. So he's worked with Kia Group, May Gurney, Southwest Water, and also consulted for Pennon Group, Veridor, Biffa and Lightfoot, amongst many others. So nice short bio to introduce you, Ben. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Darren.
That's all right. So in this episode, what I wanted to talk about with Ben and really welcomed Ben's unique takes on some of this stuff is making the human connection. So, which is all about getting colleagues on the front line to understand what CX means to them and the impact their behaviours can make on delivering customer experiences, making customer experiences better more consistently, and that whole kind of area around that connection with the people that really have the biggest bearing on customer experience. But yeah, interesting topic. And so, what's your kind of thoughts on this?
It is, and I think customer experience at the very front line, and we touched on this a little bit in the last episode of the CustomerSure podcast that we did, Darren, was where I think often frontline operational staff are quite often the most visible element of your customer service, customer experience as an organisation. And they're sometimes, not always, but sometimes the least engaged. Mm-hmm. I think what my experience tells me is that you really need to educate and empower frontline colleagues in order to elevate customer experience and help them understand that the human connection is really valuable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and sometimes that's obvious because the touch point is into a contact center, for example, where we're answering the calls or, kind of doing web chat or responding to email. And I think generally in the Western world, we do that pretty well, not always, but generally that gets lots of focus.
Yeah.
I think when teams are more, are kind of on the road and they might have a more technical element to their job. I think I've worked with lots of organizations that perceive customer service to be the boys and girls in a contact center to be the provider of customer service, where in fact the service that customers are paying for is often provided by operational people doing technical things or delivering technical things. And I think with those teams, you've got to, well, with all teams that are talking to customers, I think you really need to kind of personalize the why in terms of helping every colleague understand how their role directly affects a customer's day, mood, and therefore loyalty and propensity to rebuy. I think that's being pretty important. I think storytelling internally is so important.
Yeah.
I used to, in an organization I used to work at, would literally do a highlights CD for all the board members at the end of every month, so that on their drive home from Friday they could listen to actual customer calls from a contact center, and to highlight where we got things really right and where we got things really wrong as well. But however you do it, I think sharing those short, powerful customer moments, both wins and misses, help to humanize what we're trying to achieve and help people understand that whatever your role, in my role, I can make this experience for customers better, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally does, Ben. I like some of the observations there about what does it mean for them, and the storytelling bit is crucial. I'm a big advocate for storytelling and bringing the insights to life. I think where some CX teams get it wrong when they're communicating with frontline colleagues now, whether they be in a contact center or your delivery drivers or your bin
Yeah,
collection people or your account managers or the people that deliver the products, whoever it is I think sometimes CX teams start with the numbers and start with the metrics, and I think that's the wrong place to start because people glaze off the kickoff, depending on the company culture, but they may be thinking, who is this customer experience team? They may be a bit negative, they may be a bit cynical, they may be, oh, this is the latest fad, who's this we've got to sit in a room and listen to for the next hour. And is it just going to be them wagging their finger about do this, don't do that? And it's kind of like can create a bit of an us and them culture, and I don't kind of like that. Or they start with a load of slides of numbers and NPS scores or CSAT scores, which obviously that's a world we're in, Ben, and we know what they mean, and we're well versed in it. But if you're the customer facing person, often they haven't got foggiest what any of that is. So that's why I like the storytelling pieces that strip all that away. If you're going to use the stats, and they can have their place for league tables and performance, definitely, but hold them back, and lead on, what does customer experience mean for them? Make it relevant, to their role, not some other part of the business they can't control, and also what do they need to do maybe differently tomorrow or more of it. That's I think.
yeah, exactly, and how to do it as well.
Yeah.
How to do it, and I think some of that is about shifting something from being a task to understanding the purpose and why we're doing
Yeah.
something, but from a customer's perspective.
Yes.
So that you're not just going there to use your example of a delivery driver. You're not just going there to drop off a parcel, but you're going there to potentially make somebody's day for something that they've been waiting for, that they're excited about. So just it doesn't have to be lengthy or difficult, but what is the greeting that you're going to give on the doorstep? How are you going to leave that customer? And so when you talk about human connection, all of that stuff's really important.
Mm.
When I order stuff from Amazon, there's generally 2 or 3 people that will deliver parcels when I'm working here at home, and one of them in particular is amazing. And I now reached the point where I recognise the van, and I know he's going to tell me what he's listening to on his earbuds, because he's always got Spotify going, and he's kind of built a bit of rapport. And actually, for Amazon, that does make a massive difference because they've got such massive market share. But in other businesses, it definitely will. It definitely
does.
make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think using language with customers, whether you're sat in a contact center or you're out there as doing something in the field and based out of a van, using language that resonates with the customer is massively helpful from a sort of human connection perspective. So, talk to the customer in a language that the customer understands, and some of that's really simple about not using company jargon and making things relatable, but also make it values driven in terms of how you talk to your customers. I still talk to lots of organizations, and one of which was my insurance company last week, who resolved the issue, but they used entirely internal language that was that was all about them, and they didn't really use language that empathized that they had caused me a problem by an error on their system. So it was and that can just come across as being really defensive, even when you've fixed the problem that the customer's raised.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point, actually, to make it that kind of relevance, and also cutting out that company jargon is a really interesting point, and one that I hadn't thought about is that when you're in an organization, there's acronyms, there's terminology that you use all the time, but a customer doesn't see it that way. A customer maybe just is about what they feel often in the connection with you. So it's your delivery driver that you can smile and say hi to, and maybe a bit of banter about what he's listening to. That's a human connection there. And you might just suddenly think, goodness, if all delivery drivers were just a bit more like that, wouldn't it? It'd just make my life a bit easier, a bit happier, and also make everyone feel a bit happier. And also, actually, it makes the employee happier as well. Because one thing what I found working with companies is that when they do things that are more customer centered and a bit more hi, how are you? A bit more friendly, perhaps in customer service facing roles. They have a better day because of it as well, because
Of course they
we've
do.
all been there in working environments where if you have a prickly conversation with a customer or you're not kind of bothered about if someone doesn't give the best of, they have a rubbish day as well. So interestingly, when I've done some of the storytelling stuff, it's sharing good examples. So it's never saying on a negative. It's talking about customers like you talking about your delivery driver, or I don't know, someone who has a house repair, and them saying actually the repairer was lovely. He showed me his name badge. He took his shoes off without asking him to take his shoes off. He was polite. He was courteous. Whatever it might be. He cleaned up after himself. Basic stuff, but from that customer's point of view, it makes a big difference. So,
It,
hey, sorry for interrupting the video, but I'll be quick. Now, is your VOC program really making an impact, or are hidden gaps really holding you back? Take our free VOC maturity assessment to get instant insights and actions to improve your VOC program. It only takes 5 minutes and you'll be closer to take your VOC program to the next level. Click the first comment to find out more. Now, let's get back to the video.
does massively.
Yeah.
And it's a slight change of topic, but I think it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. And we're talking about human interaction and making it human. I think we all, as CX leaders and consumers, accept that AI, automation, even IVR is and it's part of how we do business today, and I think everybody accepts that. But I think there are a couple of things that drive me potty. One is there are times when a customer just wants or needs to speak to a human being, and I think we increasingly make that harder and harder to achieve.
Yeah.
Without being particularly honest about the reason. So we're using technology to serve customers generally. So, well, I just think it's important to be honest with your customers about why you're doing it. If it's to genuinely improve service, then that's great, and say that. But if it's to save money and make the business more sustainable, then that's what you should say. I had an experience with I don't mind naming and shaming Lloyd's Bank just this weekend, where I went to get some cash out to buy the kids an ice cream, and the cash point in question at my debit card. So no, don't have debit card. So I rang Lloyd's Bank and couldn't speak to a human being. It was a Sunday, to be fair, but couldn't speak to a human being. So, but the way the IVR was set up was saying your own words what the problem is. Okay, so cash points eaten my card. Okay, great. We understand your card's unavailable. Yes, that's right. The next set of questions that the IVR asked me were for details from the card that has just been eaten. It's like, well, it's stuck in a wall. I can't do anything about it. Who kind of tested that process through the IVR from a customer's perspective and signed that off? Clearly nobody, or somebody didn't care very much. And then secondly, it was so difficult to get to speak to a human being to do something very simple.
Yeah.
Now, actually, when I did speak to a human being, they pointed out that I could have self-served on the app, but that wasn't made particularly clear or intuitive either. So I think, we're talking about human connection in customer experience, and I've gone a little bit off topic, but I do think it's important that even when you're unashamedly taking the human element away, making sure that works in a way that we as human consumers can interact with easily, and giving an alternative is just so massively important.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point. Well, firstly, sorry about your bank card. Obviously,
that's all right.
Nightmare scenario, but you make some really interesting points. And actually, the one that made me smile there was when you spoke to the advisor finally, and they may have been really helpful, but you said, "Oh, you could have done that through the app." And that goes back to the previous point you made, actually, where using it from the internal perspective, because the internal perspective says they're looking at it from the company point of view, and they're saying, "Well, actually, we've got the capability in the app to do that." Now, if I'm having a panic about my bank card and I've lost my bank card and I need it, or how am I going to get it back, or whatever, the last thing you're probably likely to do as human behavior is actually, oh, let me get on the app and see if I can sort this out. Well, some people may do, but I'd probably do the same as you and actually try and call them up. So to say, oh, an internal point of view is, oh, we can just do it all through the app. And you may well, but it'd be hard to find it. But the other point about the human element, which I find interesting there, is in that scenario, there must be a lot of people go through that particular customer journey. So you think there'd be a quick way to streamline people to speak to someone where, and then immediately empathize, really sorry, apologize, reassure, rest assured, your card's frozen or locked or whatever it is. You can't use contactless, and we'll get another one out to you straight away, and that card will be shredded or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is. So yeah, interesting. No, good, some good examples, yeah. And my final point on just staff members making a difference is I think the people that do it best are really, really small companies. So when I've worked with organisations, I say, where do you get the best? If you make it more conversational, say, where do you get great service as a person? If you step out of the business when you're not working, when you're on a weekend, where do you get the best service? And invariably, it's companies that it's the small, tiny micro businesses. I get great service from my hairdresser because we have a chat about the football, or I get a great service from the local coffee shop because the lady smiles and really friendly. And it's because they kind of make the service front and center. They rarely say, or it's when I call my utility company, or when I rang Sky or Virgin, or when I rang my bank. They don't often say that. They actually say it's the local garage or hairdresser or coffee shop or pet shop, whatever it might be. And the difference is because they're kind of going back to your other point, actually, what I really like what you said, Ben, about is empowerment. Now, if you go to a cafe or a hairdresser, they're totally empowered to have a chat with you when I'm cutting your hair and have a bit of banter. And you co-create a solution together, which is the perfect co-creation of hairdresser, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
But and that's where some organizations are like, no, this is how it's got to be done. And I know it's not easy, but if you can empower them to do more or make decisions like they would if they're on their own micro business.
Well, I think you've hit on a point that I definitely wanted to talk about, which was customer culture. Now, well, there's two reasons why small organizations get customer service better than great big ones, and that's because it's smaller, is easy to control, both in terms of process and culture, and therefore empowerment of staff. But I think it's not impossible, and I have done a lot of work with organizations on customer culture over the years, and I think it is as relevant today as it always has been. And I think culture as an organization grows, and making sure that the service and solutions that you put in place aren't lost by that is one of the most valuable things that a CX leader can be seen to lead on, and really, really walk the walk and talk the talk on that. Because I think as soon as you start to compromise who you recruit, how you train, what you empower your staff to be able to deliver and do for customers, it's pretty critical. And I think, writing down the values of customer experience in a customer charter, whatever you want to call it, and communicating that with your staff and measuring your staff not only in what they do but how they do it against that set of customer values is a really valuable thing to do. And I think I will just cite one example. If you talk to Octopus Energy customers, I'm sure there are some that have had a bad experience, but generally the ones I talk to are all blown away by the interactions that they have with Octopus Energy staff. And that's not least because of the culture that Greg, who's the CEO of that business, embodies in his management team and his staff on a weekly basis. And it's something that, as his business has gone from that big to this big, he's kept a grasp of. And I think it just makes a huge difference. So that culture piece is massive.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point with the culture piece. I agree. And as a Octopus Energy customer myself, who switched from the bigger, that's exactly what they've caught on, because and obviously their business has grown and been very successful because of it. But what they've done is put customer centricity and the customer at the heart of everything. And I think the culture bit is huge. And can you make an organization which isn't truly customer centric if you're a CX leader? It's very difficult to do it. It's better coming from the very top. That said, you tinker around the edges if that culture's not there, but it can be done. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the customer charter of putting it up on making it very clear is key, and then almost measuring or viewing people against that. Yeah, good. Yeah. Fabulous, Ben. Some really great observations and comments there. Such a massive topic about that human connection. I'm sure, again, we could talk all day about this. And thank you once again to those people listening, watching, wherever you're listening and watching this podcast. Please do a couple of things, really. So please get in touch with your thoughts, questions, comments on that topic. Another thing is, if there's any other topics you'd like us to talk about in future episodes, then we'd love to hear what those would be. And the third one I'd like to encourage everyone to do is seek out Ben on LinkedIn and connect with Ben. That's all right, Ben. And then
come say hello. I'd love that.
and then come say hi. And Ben's massively experienced and got loads of far more examples and ideas than we could possibly cover in a single episode of this. So do connect with Ben and follow out what he's doing. So leaves me to say thank you once again, Ben, for joining us for another episode. It's been fun. Thank you again.
Yeah, no, thank you. I hope it's been interesting. It's been good.
Yeah, no, great. And thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye for now. Bye.
Bye, everyone.